a love injection in your soul and in your life that you actually find joy in serving others. You find joy in even sacrificing for others. And you find joy in dying for others. That's a deep love. And that's the vantage point, especially for a colonized people. Because to be colonized means what? That you've been taught to hate yourselves. You say, no, that's not true, Brother West. I love being Puerto Rican. Really? You'd be surprised the lies you could tell to yourself. Because love is not just something uttered, it's a life lived. It's not just a proposition you put forward. It's a test and a trial that you have to meet every day. And when you really, really love folk, let's say, you fall in love with a slice of humanity, precious Puerto Ricans, brothers and sisters, it means you make them a priority. And you're willing to live and even die for them. That's why I like these folk. My dear brother Bezos Campos. You might not politically agree or ideologically conform, but you cannot deny that he had a love affair with the Puerto Rican people. And you look at his body, the human radiation that the imperial elites with their colonial agents on the island did to him, and he still had a smile on his face. And the same is true with Julia, the same is true with Lolita. We can go right across the board. Now see, for Christians, that ought to be the kind of love we're talking about. We haven't got to the political issues yet. We're talking about love. Because what you attend to says something about who you are. And the priorities of the peoples that you highlight says something about your love. So Martin Luther King Jr. used to always say, oh, well, justice is what love looks like in public, precisely because when you really love the sanitation workers, when you love black people who've been enslaved in Jim Crow over 350 years, then you make them a priority, not because you hate white brothers and sisters, but because you love those who often are unloved. You care for those who are often uncared for. You attend to those who are unattended to, especially in the mainstream and streamlined discourse. When we look at the discourse these days in the American empire, it's clear Wall Street is highly loved. They get $85 billion every month, and when they went under and asked for welfare, they got over $800 billion. Poor people ask for millions, and they say, pull yourselves up by your own bootstraps. You got to be personally responsible. You got to learn what it is to be culpable in dealing with the consequences of your actions. Wall Street executives engaged in criminal activity, and not one has been prosecuted by the U.S. government. That reflects your priorities. That's called neoliberal capitalist practices. It was already initially tried on Latin American countries under austerity measures. We see it in Detroit this very moment. All Detroit needs is $17 billion, but 7 banks get $85 billion every month, and it doesn't even occur to the politicians to bail out Detroit. And yet those precious human beings, each of them made in the image of God, in Detroit, suffering intensely with their pensions now lost unless they can make a legal case. So the important thing to keep in mind, I think, as Christians, is not a matter of entering the dialogue and talking about social transformation with a political and ideological agenda. You begin with the love. And you say, who's really loved? What are the lens through which you look at the world? Christians should always begin with the scandal of the cross and look at the world through the lens of the cross. The unarmed truth with that body on the cross and the unconditional love of the life and death enacted by that body, that particular Jewish brother named Jesus, killed by the Roman Empire with the cooperation with neo-colonial Jewish agents. Not the Jews that killed Jesus. The Roman Empire with the cooperation of conservative, reactionary, neo-colonial Jewish brothers. Because there's always been anti-colonial Jewish brothers and sisters too. And that's very important to keep in mind. And that's very important to think about Puerto Rico. You've got a long history of neo-colonial activity in Puerto Rico, and you've got a rich history of anti-colonial activity in Puerto Rico. But as Christians, we are to be in the world, but not of the world. What does that mean? That means that the joy and courage and love that we have ought to allow us to inject ourselves as agents of a kingdom to come in this world, with slices of that kingdom realized in our love and joy and courage in this world, but never allow the Christian gospel to be reduced solely to a political program or an ideological agenda, because we ought to have a suspicion of political and ideological agendas across the board, even when certain agendas do coincide with kingdom building, like those that love the poor, the weak, the vulnerable, the elderly, working people, the excluded, the Jews, the Arabs, the Muslims, especially the children. Especially the children. And I think the kind of awakening that Brother Martin was calling for right before he was shot down, facilitated by the FBI in the American Empire. When shot by the FBI, he was facilitated. They knew about it, just like they knew about the death of Malcolm X. That's just how vicious, how cold-hearted